I stood there at the edge of that ancient dam, my hands gripping the weathered iron crank, feeling the weight of generations in every rusty turn as the water began to roar out below, transforming what was once a serene body of water into a chaotic revelation of mud and forgotten sins. And in that moment, with the dawn light breaking over the horizon, I watched as Marcus Langford's construction machines started sinking into the ooze, their engines sputtering like dying beasts, while the sharp tang of unearthed decay filled the air, a scent that screamed of justice. Long overdue, mixing with the faint bitterness of my coffee, pulled from my great-grandfather's battered flask that had seen better days but still held the warmth of home. It was me, Jacob Harlan, 54 years old, a fourth-generation structural engineer, staring down at the chaos I'd unleashed, my heart pounding with a cocktail of triumph and lingering sorrow, because this wasn't just about a lake or some land. It was about fighting back against the kind of greed that devours everything good in its path, stripping away the quiet mornings where the mist rose like ghosts from the water. The loons called out their haunting songs, and family stories were passed down like sacred rituals, and boy, did it feel like the universe was finally balancing the scales after months of me feeling like I was drowning in my own backyard. Let me pull you back to how it all ignited, because if you've ever dealt with a pushy neighborhood board turning your slice of paradise into their personal cash machine, you'll get why my blood boiled from the start, that slow simmer turning into a full boil as memories of simpler times clashed with the harsh reality unfolding before me. Picture this: 52 acres of pristine Michigan lakeside, bought by my great-grandfather in 1922 for a song and a promise, back when Silverwood Lake was nothing more than a timber mill's holding pond. Murky and industrial, filled with the echoes of saws and the sweat of loggers long gone. But he saw the potential, a quiet haven where a family could breathe free, away from the noise of the world. Teaching kids to cast lines and listen to the whisper of the wind through the pines, the kind of place where you'd sit at dusk, watching fireflies dance over the water, feeling connected to something bigger than yourself. I'm the guy who grew up here, learning from my dad how to read the water's mood, the creak of the old pier underfoot like a lullaby, the smoke from our hand-built chimney curling up like a prayer, and for decades, it was peace, pure and simple, uninterrupted by the outside world's chaos, until Victoria Langford slithered in from the big city 3 years back. With her polished nails, her luxury SUV that gleamed unnaturally under the sun, and a hunger for control that could swallow whole communities, her arrival marking the beginning of the end for the tranquility I'd taken for granted. She and her husband Marcus, who ran a string of building firms across the state, their names synonymous with rapid developments that left scars on the landscape, bought the flashiest mansion on the shore, a sprawling eyesore of glass and steel that clashed with the rustic charm of the area, and before you could say property values, she'd charmed her way into heading the Silverwood Shores Community Board, promising upscale upgrades and a unified aesthetic that sounded fancy but really meant bulldozing anything that didn't fit her glossy brochure. Dreams, her meetings filled with PowerPoint slides of manicured lawns and infinity pools, while the rest of us wondered what happened to the wild beauty that drew us here in the first place. I was away on a site inspection up north for a couple weeks, rebuilding a bridge after a storm that had washed away years of neglect, my mind already weary from calculations and concrete pours. When I rolled back into my driveway, tires crunching on the familiar gravel that always signaled home, only to spot these glaring yellow markers stabbing into my beach like warning signs from hell, their plastic fluttering mockingly in the breeze. And there she was, Victoria, pulling up in her gleaming ride, blocking me in with a screech of tires, stepping out in heels that screamed money and impracticality for lakeside dirt, clipboard in hand, flashing a grin that was all teeth and no soul, her perfume cloying and invasive against the fresh pine scent I'd missed. She announced with that fake enthusiasm, her voice pitched like a sales pitch at a convention, that my land was now earmarked for their grand vision, a sprawling 150-unit condo complex that would elevate the area, turning our hidden gem into a crowded resort, including seizing my plot through some shady community benefit vote they'd held in my absence, the words tumbling out as if she were bestowing a gift rather than a theft. and I could feel the ground shift under me. Not literally, but in that gut-wrenching way when something sacred is threatened. Oh, the nerve of it hit me like a cold wave crashing over the dock, because this wasn't just dirt and water. This was where my father showed me how to mend nets with patient hands, where I scattered his ashes after the cancer took him too soon. The ripples carrying him into eternity, where the echoes of family laughter still lingered in the rustle of leaves and the splash of skipped stones, memories that flashed through my mind like old film reels, each one a stab of injustice as she dismissed my fated deed as outdated, waving off a century of ownership like it was yesterday's news, insisting progress demanded sacrifice. And my humble cottage, with its weathered siding and stories etched into every beam, just didn't match their elite vibe, her words dripping with condescension that made me want to laugh bitterly, if only to mask the rising fury. I felt that knot in my gut, the kind that mixes rage with disbelief, thinking, how dare she treat our legacy like a bargaining chip in her empire-building game? Her eyes scanning my property as if appraising it for auction, but I kept my cool, clutching that old document with ink faded but rights ironclad, knowing deep down this was war, a battle for the soul of the place that had shaped me. And as her taillights faded down the dusty road, kicking up gravel like insults, I remembered my great-grandfather's words echoing in my mind. Stand firm when the world's trying to wash you away, especially then, his voice rough from years of hard labor, a mantra that had seen us through storms both literal and figurative. The conflict exploded right away. No slow burn, because Victoria wasn't one for subtlety. 3 mornings later, I'm out on the pier with my dawn brew, the steam mingling with the crisp mist off the lake, the world still hushed except for the gentle lap of water against wood. When this officious type in a branded vest marches up, his footsteps heavy and intrusive, barking that my early footsteps are breaching new serenity. Protocols she'd rammed through the board, rules that appeared overnight like weeds, and it was laughable, almost, if it wasn't so infuriating, like they owned the sunrise itself, the irony twisting in my chest as I sipped my coffee, wondering if next they'd regulate the birds' songs. Then came the inspections, a parade of clipboard-wielding enforcers declaring my pier a hazard under rules invented overnight, their voices droning on about load-bearing specs and compliance codes that smelled of freshly printed bureaucracy, demanding fixes that'd cost a fortune, more than my truck and tools combined, while her cronies on the Silverwood Shores Community Board nodded along like puppets, old neighbors suddenly avoiding my gaze at the local store, their whispers following me like shadows, whispering about how I was holding back progress, the betrayal stinging like salt in a wound. It was a siege, plain and simple, the injustice of it gnawing at me, turning every sip of coffee bitter, each creak of the pier a reminder of what was at stake. But as an engineer, I knew structures crack under pressure if you find the weak points, so I dove into the records at the county archive, dust choking the air like forgotten regrets, pages yellowed with time and neglect, my flashlight cutting through the dimness as I uncovered discrepancies in their filings, missing stamps and rushed approvals that screamed of corner cutting. And there, buried in the fine print of my great-grandfather's deed, was the gold, riparian rights that stretched to the lake's heart. Control over water that could drown any developer's plans, a revelation that sent a spark through me, mixing hope with the fire of determination, knowing this was about more than land. It was about honoring the blood and sweat that built it, the love that bound generations, and I wouldn't let it slip away without a fight. As the pressure mounted, Victoria's tactics turned vicious. Like a storm gathering force over the lake, dark clouds rolling in with thunderous intent, sending security patrols to prowl my shores at ungodly hours, their boots thudding like accusations in the night, flashlights slicing through the darkness, their cigarette smoke wafting in like an unwelcome guest, claiming they were safeguarding the neighborhood while really just harassing me. Intimidating with their presence, and I'd step out, robe flapping in the chill wind off the water, my voice steady but edged with anger, demanding they leave my property, only to get smirks and mentions of board approval, making me wonder if we'd slipped into some dystopian rule where money bought the law, the absurdity of it all bubbling up in a dark chuckle as I retreated inside. But the fear lingered, a cold grip on my spine. They blocked my access road with a fancy gate, its keypad gleaming mockingly under the sun, forcing me on detours that ate time and patience. Winding through back roads that added miles to every errand, the frustration building like pressure in a fault line, and the town turned cold. Credit denied at the hardware store where I'd been a regular for decades. The owner shuffling feet and mumbling apologies. Conversations halting at the diner mid-sentence, plates clattering awkwardly. Rumors swirling that I was unraveling since my split, painting me as the unstable one with wild eyes and desperate motives. And it hurt, deep in the chest, because my divorce was private pain, a wound still raw from lost dreams and empty rooms. Not ammunition for their smear campaign, but to them, it was just another tool to isolate me, to break my spirit, yet all it did was fuel the resolve, reminding me of family bonds that no board could sever. The photos on my mantle of smiling faces urging me onward. I countered with research, poring over historical files at the local society, the air thick with the scent of aged paper and secrets. Long buried, where the kind archivist, her glasses perched on her nose like a guardian of truths, slipped me boxes of mill records, whispering warnings about eyes everywhere and ears listening in. Shadowed corners, her hands trembling slightly as she passed them over. And that's when the twist hit. Silverwood Lake wasn't natural. It was dammed in 1921 by a logging outfit that folded during hard times. The structure left in limbo, untaxed and unclaimed, a relic with controls that could alter everything. Its blueprints faded but detailed, showing gears and levers that held the power to reshape the landscape. For pocket change, I snapped it up at a tax sale, the clerk dusting off files from decades back, her surprise evident as she stamped the papers, and suddenly, I held the key to exposing foundations, to shifting the battleground. But Victoria smelled trouble, storming my drive with threats veiled as promises, her eyes flashing steel beneath perfectly arched brows, warning I'd regret crossing her, her voice low and laced with venom that made the air feel thicker. And as she sped off, gravel flying like shrapnel, I sensed the desperation beneath her polish, the kind that makes people dangerous, her facade cracking just enough to reveal the panic of someone teetering on ruin. The escalation peaked with her pulling strings, restraining orders, barring me from the dam. The papers served with a smug grin from her lawyer, bulldozers tearing into my trees with mechanical growls, the crash of ancient oaks like family members falling. Splintering would echoing across the water like cries of pain, water clouding with poison from runoff, fish dying in droves, their silvery bodies floating belly up in a macabre display. Then came the revelations from Elena Ramirez, the reporter who'd been digging tirelessly, her late-night calls filled with urgency, uncovering the Langfords' financial ruin from botched projects that a Superfund nightmare waiting to erupt, the kind of legacy pollution that poisoned not just water but futures. We built a coalition, me coordinating with Harlan Brooks, the ex-ranger documenting violations with his camera clicking like a metronome of evidence, capturing every illicit dump and scarred earth. Nathaniel Reed, the sharp lawyer crafting suits under clean water laws, his briefs stacked like ammunition, and Travis Klein, rallying overlooked owners with passionate speeches at hidden meetings, our plan surgical, drained precisely to reveal the horrors without flooding. Downstream, sensors tracking every toxin in real-time data streams, media ready to blast it wide with headlines that would scorch. But Victoria fought dirty, attempted bribes caught on tape and grainy footage that made my blood run cold, psych holds to lock me away in sterile rooms for evaluation, her fabricated claims painting me as deranged, even fresh dumps to blur blame lines under cover of night, her desperation peaking in a frantic bid to seize the dam via shady meetings in dimly lit county halls, only for protests to swell outside, signs waving like battle flags, and Judge Eleanor. Visions of failure haunting me, yet fueled by the injustice, the love for my lineage, the by-kitch of a paradise poisoned, ready to unleash the payback they deserved, the climax building like a wave. Cresting, unstoppable. The climax broke at dawn that fateful Monday, my fingers turning the dam's ancient valves with a creak that resonated through my bones. water surging free with a thunderous growl that drowned out the world, the level dropping steady and sure, inch by inch revealing the underbelly of deceit, and across the way, alarms blared as Marcus's sights turned to sludge. Machines mired in thickening mud, workers scrambling in panic, their shouts carrying over the water like desperate pleas, the air thick with panic and the foul reek of revealed poisons, rusted barrels surfacing like skeletons from a grave, oily slicks spreading in iridescent shame, debris from eras past tumbling into view, all surfacing like accusations from the grave, a visual testament to years of neglect and greed that made my chest tighten with a mix of vindication and sorrow for the lake's suffering. Federal teams rolled in precisely as planned, Dr. Emily Vaughn leading with grim determination, her boots sinking slightly into the exposed bed as she directed tests, her team swarming like investigators at a crime scene, declaring it a hazard zone with authoritative clips of her voice over walkie-talkies, her tests confirming the nightmare and stark reports of elevated toxins and irreversible damage, while Victoria arrived in a fury, her white SUV skidding to a halt, gravel spraying like her unraveling composure, screeching denials that echoed hollowly, her facade cracking as cameras captured every word, every frantic gesture, but evidence mounted, videos of dumps playing on looped screens, forged papers fluttering in the wind, bribes exposed in damning detail. And in that cinematic showdown, I faced her amid the mud and mayhem, deed in hand like a shield, voice steady amid the chaos, explaining how her greed poisoned what my family cherished, the words pouring out with an emotion finally bung no, the crowd roaring as agents cuffed her wrists. Her designer clothes muddied, justice crashing down like the waves she'd tried to control, a moment frozen in time, cinematic and cathartic. In the aftermath, the lake healed under federal funds, $2. That filled the sky with life, the water clarifying to a crystal blue that mirrored the heavens, and school groups now tour the site, learning about resilience and responsibility, their young voices asking questions that echo my own childhood curiosities. Victoria was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for fraud and eco-crimes, her appeals crumbling like her empire, Marcus bankrupted, barred from building forever, his equipment auctioned off in lots that barely covered debts, their palace, once a symbol of excess, sold at auction for pennies, stripped bare and humbled. The Silverwood Shores Community Board rebuilt under Travis Klein, enforcing green rules that honored the land with moratoriums on development, community gardens blooming where condos were planned. Values soared in the clean waters, buyers drawn to the purity we'd fought for. My business thrived helping others fight similar battles across states, consulting on dams and deeds with a newfound purpose. And best of all, Ryan brought the grandkids last summer, us fishing together from the reinforced pier, laughter echoing over the ripples, their small hands gripping rods as I shared tales of their great-great-grandfather, the continuity of love washing away the bitterness, while the dam stood as a monument to resilience, its mechanisms oiled and preserved, me and Elena tying the knot in. A simple ceremony by the shore, waves lapping like applause, teaming up to expose more wrongs with her pen and my blueprints, closure wrapping around like the lake's gentle embrace. Or just the dose of karma they earned. Tell me in the comments, did justice prevail here? Or does mercy have a place when greed threatens everything you hold dear?